So why don't we stay with running backs here? I'll knock out my running back, and then you'll knock out your running back, and I think the rest we have our non-running back takes. You want to do that?
We will eventually talk about non-running backs today.
Yeah. All right. I'll do mine, and I think it really will flow nicely into yours. Adjust draft capital expectations for the rookie running backs, but not necessarily their value. So what do I mean by that? First off, before this whole wild ride even started, we knew that over the last few years, the NFL was, deploying and drafting running back differently. People they're just looking at the position differently than they did. One might say that the zero RB truthers in fantasy were ahead of the NFL, right? Slightly, right? So we know that they're not putting as much draft capital into the position as possible. I mean, as they used to, right? And so what I had been sort of developing as a thesis, so to speak, with some folks and getting some mixed feedback on it, but not that I was, on a different planet, was that, a fourth round running back these days, and maybe even the right fifth one, isn't the dreaded day three running back, quote unquote, that it used to be, simply because we're shifting the expectations downward positionally. Just like we have a different positional threshold for draft capital with quarterbacks now, which is like, first rounder, the NFL doesn't like you. And whatever we want to see rounds 1 through 3 for wide receivers, we kind of maybe have to shift our expectations for running backs. So we knew that going in, right? Or at least that's where my mind was. Now enter this wild ride off season. You've now had the Panthers, Eagles, Bears with Foreman. You're going to talk about the Dolphins soon. It's like we've already had some prime running back spots. Maybe not scratch off a rookie coming in the draft, but certainly either much less likely to spend high capital, and or they're insured against, like, if they don't get their guy, well then then we can spend lower capital because we brought in XYZ running back. So I think what I'm doing is taking the running back class 2023 and even just going just a little bit downward in my expectation. Like the whole class just kind of shifts downward a little bit for the most part. Maybe after the first 3 or 4 guys, though, in draft capital expectation, but not necessarily fantasy value. Yes, it's still a 5th-round pick. And yes, the NFL still thinks of a 5th-round pick the way it thinks of a 5th-round pick, right? But, a 5th-round pick running back means X in fantasy. Like, that's what it means, right? Like, this guy is the, RB2 in a committee. This guy is the third down back in a committee. We can expect X points per game in PPR from this guy. It means pretty much the same thing. Maybe the value is a little different in what you're willing to give up because the insulation isn't there with the lower capital, but not much. So I guess my advice would be, don't overreact too much if your late 3rd round darling running back ends up late 4th. It's not a huge difference in my opinion.